Hello, brothers and sisters. Welcome to another episode of the Mental Funkyverse. Standard episode today, even though I'm smoking. I always will on my videos, but it's not a smoking lounge. This is just a general Mental Funkyverse. A quick update. There's been a development in my current situation that I was referring to on the last smoking lounge episode. I mentioned that I was in an awkward situation that I can't really go into the details of. However, an opportunity has presented itself to allow me to potentially solve that issue. So that's good. Yeah, the energies are a bit weird at the moment. Intense, obviously, for numbers of reasons. With what's going on globally, geopolitically, but also with what's going on, with the more metaphysical aspect of the process we're going through right now. Obviously, lots of things happening in the news, etc., etc. New developments, technology, AI is progressing as fast as ever. Loads of developments occurring. But for little old me, I'm sat here with a chicken stew, slow cooking on the pot now. I've been preparing over the last hour or two. I was just watching a interview with, what was the guy's name? Let me pull it up. David Starkey. So, the video, the title of the video was "The End of the British Empire." He estimates that the odds are stacked about 4-1 against the British, Britain being able to overcome and get through this period and reverse all of the very damaging things that have been happening to it. And he gave historical examples when Britain was also in that same situation with a roughly 4-1 against. Where the odds were it was going to descend into a broken state, chaos, etc. I mean, yeah. When the political will is there, when the will is there, full stop. When we're backed into a corner, all it takes is a few to start doing something, and then that crack in the dam gets wider, and then eventually the whole thing push forward. As to what that is or who will be doing that, we shall see. We shall see. It's obviously I'm hoping that they'll do it soon, or it will happen soon. The pressure's mounting now. Obviously, being here in Cambodia is like, literally a world away on the other side of the planet from what's going on. It's funny because that kind of gives you, it has kind of two effects. On one side of things, having such distance from that situation allows you to have even greater levels of sort of depths of observation, because you're not living in it. It's not such an immediate thing. It's not such an oppressive thing. A soup you are literally being cooked in, along with everybody else. You can look at it from the outside and sort of you're able to question things from different angles, see things. There's less emotional drive. There's less emotional effect, direct emotional effect on you. So you can be more, I suppose, clinical. You could be a bit more matter of fact about your observations. You can question some of the things you thought may have been going on. Or was I right about that? Was I wrong right about this? Was I wrong about that? Was I wrong about this? Because once you remove yourself from the situation, you look back, I can compare what I observe now, have been observing for the time I've been here, compared to when I was living there. And I can cross-reference. I can say, right, well, with this much time and distance, was my thinking right then? Were my feelings right then? Was it really what I thought and said it was? And for the vast majority, yes. And in some cases worse. And now, on the other hand, it also comes with its own sort of set of considerations and feelings and ponderances in terms of, because you are not there, there is not really, there was a sense that you couldn't really do much when you were there, but at least you were there, and so the opportunity to do something might have presented itself. Now I'm a world away. So all I can do is watch, and that comes from with its own set of, wrestling and struggling within, because, it comes with notions of cowardice, it comes with notions of, mostly cowardice really, but, these notions of have I abandoned my people? Have I abandoned my country? Have I abandoned my culture, my nation? No, and to be honest with you, having considered this, and believe me, I've given it considerable consideration. I've sat sat with that and meditated on that for, believe you me, a long time. And ultimately, I had to remind myself that no, I didn't run away. Really run away. I was pretty much driven out because I was just in an impossible position. And at the time before I left, we were just, I was only able to leave because they lifted the travel restrictions in 21. So I didn't have to have the to travel. As soon as that rule was lifted, I was gone. Now, in the interim period, some 5 years now, it's gotten worse. It's gotten way, way worse. But back then, the level of brainwashing and the level of mass psychosis, mass formation psychosis that was going on, it wasn't just a case of, I'm running away from imminent danger. It was, I was being driven out by the energy and the attitude of those who I was trying to assist, those who I was trying to, quote unquote, free and liberate. Not literally and physically, but in their minds, just to try and give them a deeper level of awareness of the machinations of the greater systems that were arrayed against them, and attempting to, present the evidence for that. But no, unless the evidence came from an official source, unless the evidence came from a talking head on the television, or came from a government-sanctioned expert, even though there were many, 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 many experts who were giving the antithesis, the antithesis to the thesis that was being pushed by the government and their paid experts and their government-sanctioned experts, there was equal amount of experts who weren't sanctioned by the government, who were giving an antithesis to the thesis that the government-sanctioned scientists were given. But there was no equal debate. There was no like, well, let's sit down and thrash this out, experts against experts, and we'll even televise it or whatever. No. It was just only the government-sanctioned experts were allowed to have a say. Only they were allowed to be platformed. Only they were allowed to be interviewed on television. Only they were allowed to have their voices heard. Anybody who spoke against the experts, spoke against it, had the antithesis, was shut down, deplatformed, censored, and in many cases, especially if, for example, they were medical scientists, they were doctors and physicians, would have their licenses struck so that they couldn't legitimately practice medicine anymore, even though they'd had extremely long, successful careers, had multiple studies and papers published and peer-reviewed to great applaud. The moment they went against the thesis, the moment they proposed the antithesis to the thesis that the government was pushing, that the state narrative was pushing, immediately destroyed, demonized, attacked, ridiculed. And that was the same for every single one of us who was trying to show the antithesis to what was going. And I was, I wasn't where I was now in my mind. I wasn't where I am now in my spirit and my consciousness. So I was already broken at that point. I was broken. I'd gone through a dark night of the soul. My dark night of the soul. I'd only just started to pick up the pieces and start to put myself back together again and grow in an actually meaningful way, in a solid way, with great depths of gratitude to Lee, who was my biggest and best mentor through that period and has really been through my entire life. My friend Dean, who introduced me to Lee and, who was unbelievably kind enough to allow me to move into his house and work with him and his partner in their gardening business. I was a relative stranger. We talked only on Telegram. So I've not mentioned this before in a Mental Funkyverse, but I met Lee through a friend called Dean. And now Dean had never met me until I went down there to move in with them after the London trucker protest. It wasn't really. It was on the back of the other truck protests in Canada and stuff. Well, there was like 2 trucks. The rest was all cars and vans, and it was an armada. Don't get me wrong, but it was lacking on the truck side of things. But I was able to get down to London through that, and then it was just a very short jaunt to where a train ride journey to where Dean was living. And that was the moment I met him face to face. That was the moment I met him face to face for the first time. And he took me in. And then I think it was the following week or 2 weeks later, I had my first weekend with Lee. And thus began the process of true consciousness expansion, true wisdom, true logic, and breaking down belief systems, breaking down subconscious algorithms, and questioning all of those things which I thought I knew, destroying it all, wiping the board clean, and then carefully, meticulously, methodically rebuilding what I knew, but this time not saying that this is true or I know this to be true until I had put it through the ringer in multiple ways, through logic methodologies, through deep contemplation, through real-world observation, and living through the experiences which would validate those things which I was weighing up as to testing whether or not they were true. Once you experientially see something a principle in action, a first principle in action, a function in action. And that thing which you were considering and intellectually playing with is now visibly observable. You now observe it either in something that happens to you, an experience that happens to you, or something that you observe happening to somebody else. You physically experience the observation of it happening to somebody else. And in those experiences, you see the principle, you see the function in action that you've been considering and wrestling with, and it plays out, and then it clicks, because it's like, now you've seen it, now you've experienced it, it locks in, and you can now stamp it with a tick and say, it's not the truth, it's never the truth, but what you can say is at this moment in time, for this level of consciousness, I can say this is a truth. Certainly for this level of consciousness, certainly for this set of circumstances, and it's universal. Now that I've seen it once, I see it playing out across everything. I see it playing everywhere. I say, it's in this form, and it's in that form, and it's in that form. All these forms, they looked like they were seemingly separate from each other. They looked like they weren't related in any way, shape, or form. But now I understand this function. Now I've seen this function in action here. I can actually see how all these things which previously were separated, they all actually have the same underlying function. It's just the form that's different. And because the form can be so wildly perceptually different, it gives us the false impression that the underlying functions and principles must therefore be different. And it's not. It's not. That's a great realization when you first have it. The first few times when that happens, it's great. It's world-changing. Well, it is literally world-changing and life-changing. Because then what you essentially realize is that you now have the tools, and you always really did, but now you really know, and you trust that you have the tools to be able to continually build and expand on what you can know, and convert that knowing into real practical wisdom that can be applied in day-to-day life, or to anything. So that was a key moment. That was a key moment for me, and all the thanks in the world to his partner as well, Polly. So to Lee, Dean, Polly, and then later to Jens, the guy who I lived with in Denmark and worked with for I think 18 months. Christian, my brother Christian, who eventually actually paid for me to come to Cambodia. He covered without him I wouldn't have been able to come to Cambodia from Denmark. So, I'm extremely blessed to have, met these people and to have been assisted by these people. Will always be eternally grateful to them. So I didn't run away. I often joke to people I fled the UK, but I was driven out, because the time wasn't right. They weren't ready. They needed to have, as if COVID wasn't enough, as if that period wasn't enough, they needed more. They needed even more tyranny. They needed even more oppression. They needed even more danger. And now it's come. It's on a daily basis now. The UK is becoming more dangerous, more unrecognizable, and is slipping further and further away from its once greatness. And now people are starting to wake up. Now people are starting to be more receptive. And in fact, in the last year, ironically, in the last year to 2 years, actually since the time I came to Cambodia, especially though in the last year, I've met very little resistance to all of the things that I was saying and what got me attacked, ridiculed, mocked, all of this. What put the very thing that put a target on my back in the West, in the UK, is now being received for like 95% of the conversations I've been having with my with fellow Brits that I meet here who are on holiday or who are expats. It's, I mean, it's refreshing, it's nice, but it's like, okay, cool. That time, you know, but I had to leave and come to the other side of the planet before that started to happen. Mad, innit? The irony. But I'm happy it's happening now. I'm not happy why it's happening, and I'm not happy it took this long. I'm not happy that it's taking all of the things that are happening to the native people in Britain now. The suffering they're going through, they're allowing themselves to be put through. And believe you me, they are allowing themselves to be put through it. Just like in our own individual lives, we always have choices. Even when we feel like we don't, we always have choices. And the things that happen to us are because of the things we choose, the choices we make, the actions we take, or the inactions that we don't take. And what we allow, what we choose to tolerate, the intolerable things that we choose to tolerate and allow to occur, usually because of fear of pariahship, fear of rejection, fear of going against the flow of the mass, fear of rocking the boat, fear of losing what they think they have. That fear has pushed people to do things which, even if they wouldn't admit it in their mind or wouldn't even think about it in their mind, deep down inside in their subconscious and deep in their heart, they knew was wrong, and they knew they should be doing something different or resisting against it, or, you know, taking a different direction. That was suppressed from the fear. Better to live in suffering, which is a choice, better to live in suffering of what you know than to take a chance on coming out of suffering and freeing yourself from suffering and freeing yourself from oppression. But in order to do so, you have to step into the unknown. You have to do things you haven't done before, say things you haven't said before, think things you haven't thought or didn't allow yourself to think before. And that's difficult. It's difficult. It's not easy. It's simple. I always used to joke. All of this is super simple. It's just, it's not easy. It's super simple, but it's not easy. Once done, the simplicity of it is self-evident. And it was that simple all along? Yeah, of course it was that simple all along. But it's not easy. And there are many, many examples in life of things which are simple but not easy. Climb a mountain. Climb a mountain that goes above the low oxygen level. I mean, it's simple. There's the path. There's the route. You just got to walk it. That's it. Can't get more simple. Do a little bit of climbing at some points where it gets a little bit steep, but choose yourself a mountain where there's no ropes or anything, and literally it's just a case of walking. It's simple. It's a simple thing to do. But ask anybody who's done it, it's not easy. You get halfway, 3/4 of the way up, and you get past that level where the oxygen starts to drop. And unless you're a smoker like me who has sort of hardened their body to having less oxygen than normal, you're going to suffer. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be physically uncomfortable. It's going to be physically painful. So it's not going to be easy, but it's simple. And there are so many things that follow that function and follow that principle. Consciousness expansion, self-mastery is absolutely included in that. And it's the best and most intimate and most experientially rich version of that principle. And it's also the most beneficial one. I mean, I'm sure there's benefits to climbing a mountain. But self-mastery, working on the self, working on the expansion of consciousness, that is the ultimate rewarding one. That is the most rewarding one. It is the most important. It's the most significant. And it's the one that will matter most to you in your journey. So know that it is simple. But also know that it's not easy, and it was never meant to be, it's not supposed to be, it was never going to be. Nobody gets an easy ride in this. No one. No one. Because fundamentally, in order to go on that journey, in order to begin that true expansion, you have to essentially dissolve and destroy and get rid of and break down everything you believed, everything you question, every belief, everything you thought you knew was true, and re-go through it. Now, it might be that some of those things you believed and some of those things you held to be true end up being true. And they were worth your belief. But now that once you put them through the ringer, you find out that, yes, actually they are. There is truth there and there is value there. And cool. But now it's no longer a belief. Now it's a knowing, because you've done the work to demonstrate it to yourself. You've done the work to experience it, see it in action, figure out the function, figure out the principle, and then see it in work as it plays out. And so now that which was previously a belief can be placed into the knowing category, which can then be integrated into the wisdom part of your being, can be acted on with trust moving forward. Whereas before it was just a belief. But there will be many, 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 many beliefs which won't hold water and won't hold truth. But you've built your entire life and ways of thinking and ways of engaging with the world and lenses through which to see the world on those beliefs. We all do. There's no one's an exception to this. Everybody does that. And that all has to be torn down. And it doesn't matter how much money you've got, what position you're in society. It doesn't matter how comfortable you are, how uncomfortable you are. It doesn't matter if you're poverty stricken. Everybody who wants to do this expansion process, this consciousness expansion, has to tear it all down. And that tearing down is soul destroying. It's soul destroying. Not literally, it doesn't literally destroy your soul, but it feels like it does. When you have to tear down your entire cosmology and allow it to and let go of it, it hurts. It hurts. But then you begin to rebuild. Then you begin to, one by one, belief by belief, reassert value, reassert meaning, reassert truth and knowing through actual process. Not just, I was given that and it sounded great, so yeah, I think that's true, therefore it is true. And that's now going to be my belief, and as I go forward, I will say that that is true, and I will explain it as if I know it's true, even though I just got it off somebody else or somewhere else, and it just sounded right. No, if you don't test it, it's not yours. It's just a belief. It's not a knowing. It's not a wisdom. It's just a belief you were given, and you are an idiot. Idiosis, to hold on to beliefs which you were given, or perspectives that you were given, and that you never tested, that you never put through the ringer, that you never thought about logically or considered. You just immediately accepted as being true, took it on board as true, and then moved forward acting as though it was true and proclaiming to every man and his dog that it is true. And to the point where you will even violently oppose. You will argue till you are blue in the face. You will mock and ridicule people who try and attempt to challenge that belief, even though it's one you were just given and took on board. That's idiosis. That's what it means to be an idiot. It's nothing to do with stupidity. I've met incredibly intelligent people who were just absolute idiots. Absolute idiots. So, take heed. Okay? Take heed. It's not simple. Sorry, it is simple, but it's not easy. But it is absolutely worth it. It's absolutely worth it, because once you do start to do that rebuilding, you start to get it again. You are essentially then laying the truly firm foundation upon which you carefully lay each brick to build a wall of solid truth. And truth stands on its own. The fortress of truth is impenetrable. It requires no guards on the walls. All the guards are inside playing poker, because they know there is nothing that can be arrayed against that fortress that can break it, because it is truth. If you have to rush to defend something, and especially if you're defending it vehemently, there's something wrong there. Because if it was actual truth, you wouldn't need to defend it. You certainly wouldn't need to defend it with such vehemence. You could debate about it, and you could talk to it and talk around it, but you don't need to defend it, because it's truth. So therefore it stands in its own strength. Requires no guards on the walls. Requires no defense. The truth doesn't require you to defend it. All the truth really asks of you is to stand on it, and to stand in it, and to hold to it. It says, I don't need your shield, beautiful human. I need you to get behind me and allow me to be your shield. You get it? See the difference? So yeah. There are other people who I'm grateful to, and grateful for. It would take a while to list them all here, but those were the key figures of the last 5 years. Certainly the key figures of the last 5 years. And things are changing now. Things are changing on so many levels. Personally, for me, it feels like things have just shifted as well. And there's an opportunity here to be able to move forward without certain swords of Damocles over my head, which will essentially unbind me, and I won't have any, there will be no excuses then, basically. I should, in theory, hopefully, have free reign to really push out there and really go for it. And there's lots of things I would like to do here in Cambodia. Cambodia is an amazing country. It's beautiful. The people are beautiful. The people are so, yeah, they're warm and friendly, and they have their quirks, but here is just the energy here, and it's so relaxed, and there's so much potential here. There's so much potential here, and they're very proud to be Cambodians. They really embrace their history and their heritage and their culture. And I, as a foreigner coming in here, unlike those going to Europe, I take the opposite position of those who are of the foreigners who are flooding into Europe. I take the position that I would love to assist the Cambodians to be as Cambodian as they can be. Everything to benefit the Cambodian people, to grow the Cambodian economy, to grow for the Cambodians to really grab hold of the opportunities and the potential that is here, and really rise and become, to grow as individuals and as a nation. And there's so much potential for that here, and I want to assist in that. And at the very least, I would like to create something here that other people who are serious about going on this journey, who are serious about doing the process and doing the expansion, can come and engage here. I mean, there's retreats all across Southeast Asia. Here in Cambodia is the same. You know, the New Age retreats, the hippie, you know, as my partner would say, the hippy dippy ones. You know, the ding 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 ding, or the New Age ones with New Age wisdom. The ones which require people to keep going over and over and over and over again, to go to this retreat and then that retreat and then that retreat. And they never really grow or they never really expand. They just sort of sit in a circle and jerk each other off and then tell each other how wonderful and compassionate and wise they are, and give them a little certificate for doing that retreat. No. In my mind, a true retreat should be, you come once. You come once. And it is my duty, my chosen duty. And the way I see it is like, I would not feel like I had done you service or done the person service unless they left. Once they left that retreat, they were solid and, you know, still having to do work, but they knew they were solid in themselves and trusted themselves enough to now know that they no longer required or needed some form of special treatment or outside. No. Okay, they'd begun to see their worth, they'd begun to recognize what they were, their potential, and they realized that they now have a solid framework to honor that and to go forward with that, and therefore no longer required to go to take this plant in this jungle or to go to this retreat and sit on a mat for 3 days in a row chanting. And I mean, I'm sure that's all very nice and I'm sure it gives you an experience, but that's not what I'm about. No. What I'm about is, where are you at? How do we expand that? And how do we set it so you can go forward with that on your own steam, and with the confidence and the trust in the inevitability of your eventual expansion, because you now have things in the right framework. Okay, you've got things set in the right frame for you and how you're approaching this. And so therefore, you don't need a guru anymore. You don't need a coach anymore. You don't need anything anymore other than what you always only ever really needed, which was yourself, and trust in yourself, trust in the universe. So really, any kind of retreat that I would do would be pretty much focused around that, getting you to that understanding. Not suddenly curing you and giving everything you need to suddenly make you better. No. Giving you the tools and the perspective required for you to move forward on your own steam. That would be a success. Every person that goes away, that went away from that retreat and never came back, obviously if they came back to visit me and have a conversation, that's cool. But I mean, never needed to come back to do another retreat. So left that retreat, never needed to come back to another retreat. And I found out that they never needed to go to any other retreat ever again. Winner. Done. Then I knew, I would know I had successfully completed the task I'd set out to complete in assisting that person on that retreat. One retreat, done. That's the aim. That would be the goal for me. And I'd love to set something like that up. I'd love to. I'm just a bit restricted at the moment. And hopefully that will change soon. So yeah. The winds of change are a-blowing. The times they are a-changing. They are. What was that other song? I'm going through changes in my life. It's a good one. So yeah. Let me know if you're feeling some changes as well. Let me know if you feel like there's been an energy shift, either generally or just in your own life. Personally, give me some feedback. Also, some people have already asked me questions in the comments, and as I've stated before, right now at this stage of the channel, where my subscription is so low, you know, I can literally dedicate whole videos to just answering a couple of questions from a single commenter. So take advantage of that. Take advantage of that. Because if it grows and it expands, and I suddenly go into the thousands of, and I'm getting, you know, hundreds of comments per video, then I have to be very selective and cherry pick. So this right now is the opportunity to like kind of engage with me in that way. But just let me know, you know, are you in the UK? How do you think things, how do you feel things are going right now? Are you in a state of fear? Are you in a state of like concern? Is it something that's dragging on you every day? Or are you in a state of, are you feeling quietly confident that things will turn around, and really all you're looking for is that moment when the opportunity arises and the balloon goes up and it's like, okay, now's the time to act definitively. Are you feeling confident that that is the position you're in? I'm curious. I'd like to know. And if you're an expat watching this, I'd be very curious to know if you have the same or had the same similar sentiments to myself around, you know, having come away from the country, especially if you left the country for similar reasons that I did. I'd be curious to know, you know, what your reflections are on that. And so I'll wrap it up there. If you've watched up to this point, thank you very much. As ever, I'm sincerely grateful. And so until next time, be safe, be well, my brothers and sisters.